Hiking comes with risks, and how a first aid kit helps deal with those risks is today's topic. Now, full disclosure, I'm on a wait list for wilderness first aid or WFA certification training, so this video is based entirely on my hiking experience and not on training. What I can't do is give you a list of items that will work for you because every hiker and every situation is different. What I'll do instead is describe how to go about loading your own kit. Now, it shouldn't surprise you that hiking is risky. Every activity has risks. I'm approaching the first aid kit from this perspective as it applies to solo hiking. Group hiking first aid, like for a scout troop, is different. The likelihood of injury goes up with the number of hikers, and that first aid kit can be larger and more varied. There's an important constraint for solo hikers, and that's pack weight. Someone once told me to bring a huge first aid kit, then added, "Something will go wrong, count on it," as if they were imparting wisdom from on high, but that's very naive. I understand this sentiment, and in a large group that can be a guiding principle, but for a solo backpacker, it's just not practical. I don't think that person had a grasp of what solo backpacking or hiking in small groups is about. Trade-offs have to be made and risks taken, or you're just going to weigh yourself out of hiking. Every ounce of first aid you carry is an ounce of food that you can't. That's where kit purpose and risk management come in. Let's start with kit purpose. My philosophy is that the first aid kit is for stopping small problems from becoming big problems. The key thing here is that I said the purpose of the kit, not the purpose of wilderness first aid as a discipline. A purpose of WFA can be described as stabilizing an injured person until help can arrive. I mean, sure, there are basics of band-aids, ibuprofen, antibiotic cream that everyone will carry. Beyond that, your kit philosophy matters. Being prepared to stabilize severe conditions and simply treating minor problems are entirely different. Consider these things. You have that weight limit, whether you've established what it is or not. Your kit is not the be-all and end-all for dealing with things going wrong. The nature of your hike affects what you'll bring. And some things are simply out of scope for any reasonable first aid kit. Now, you should certainly treat hypothermia with first aid, but there's nothing you carry specifically in a first aid kit for it. You use shelter, dry clothing, a sleeping bag, a stove to heat liquids, but these aren't first aid kit items. The risk of waterborne illness is reduced by treating the water, not ignoring it until you get one and then treating yourself with something from your first aid kit. You may want a small amount of medication to deal with the residual risk, what your water treatment might miss. In many industries, risk is seen as the combination of the likelihood and the consequences of an adverse event. We can deal with risk in at least 3 ways. 1, we avoid or reduce the likelihood. For hiking in the sun, reduce exposure with proper clothing and sunblock. That's cheaper and more effective than treating sunburns afterwards. Hygiene practices reduces the chances of norovirus infection. We filter water to avoid beaver fever. Now, I forgot to use sunblock when I hiked over the Presidential Range in New Hampshire, and I got second-degree burns on my legs. The proper thing to do was to get off the trail for medical treatment. There was no real stabilization needed. Proper avoidance was what I really needed, and I failed at it. 2, we transfer the risk to something other than first aid. A tracker SOS transfers catastrophic rescues to professional systems. We abandon a trip if conditions are more severe than expected. When I was on the JMT, the John Muir Trail, we promised Dave's wife that we'd end the hike early if anything seriously went wrong or we were just too physically stressed to complete it. That was a reasonable request since Dave had never hiked that distance and I had never hiked at those elevations, so the trip was a new territory for both of us. Or 3rd, we accept the risk because it's so unlikely or the consequence so small or pertinent to this discussion, we can address it with the first aid kit. So the effort you put into dealing with these risks should respect that relationship between consequence and likelihood. Something that is highly likely with severe consequences if left untreated is worth taking an effort to mitigate. If there's a high likelihood, a very severe consequence risk, then maybe the hike isn't safe enough to undertake in the first place. For example, hyperthermia and dehydration are highly probable in midsummer in the desert. The consequence can be as severe as death. That's why I plan Grand Canyon hikes for May, where the likelihood is substantially lower, though not eliminated. One problem is underestimating likelihood. So consider this situation. You're hiking the Appalachian Trail on the border between Tennessee and North Carolina on the first day of summer. What's the likelihood of hypothermia? Many of us would say that it's very low, but that would be a mistake. Here's a clip from my trip in 2023 in that exact situation. And the irony of all this is that this is the first day of summer, and I'm on the border between
two southern states, North Carolina and Tennessee. And the biggest threat that I face right now is not bears, it's not slippery rocks, though those both are real threats. It's not falling trees, but it's actually, here on the first day of summer, hypothermia. It is very cold.
So we do our best to figure out what risks we'll face. Do I need a snake bite kit? Well, in 4,000 miles of hiking, I've only come across a few venomous snakes. While I did almost step on a copperhead once, the chance of a snake bite in the environments I'm likely to hike in is low enough that I don't bring anti-venom. There is a residual risk. If I was bitten by a snake, my response would be to signal for help, then use prior knowledge of recommended treatment while waiting. I don't want to sidetrack us here. This isn't a WFA course, but here are the recommended actions from the Mayo Clinic for what to do while awaiting assistance. This is an important concept. Not all first aid comes from your kit. That's another reason to get WFA trained and certified. First aid encompasses a lot of situations. For severe situations, what's up here may be more important than what's in your first aid kit. So assess all the things that can go wrong that you can think of: hypo and hyperthermia, falls, scrapes, illness, insect bites, which vary in consequence depending on the insect, asteroid strikes, bear attacks, and plan how to address them. Those that are particularly severe go beyond what your first aid kit can do for you, and those you might transfer to another system, such as carrying a bear spray where it's necessary. Assessing risks is a good idea whether they're ultimately handled by your first aid kit or not. Know ahead of time what you'll do for any of those that you can think of. I mean, there's always going to be something you don't think of, but you just have to do your best. As an example, I've dislocated my shoulder twice on the trail. There's really nothing I can reasonably carry in a first aid kit to deal with that. I know from experience that the likelihood is not minor, but the consequence is really not that great. I mean, yes, it hurts like hell and it did require treatment, but getting off the trail at the next convenient spot was sufficient both times. One time it was a 3-mile hike, the other time it was a 9-mile hike. So to recap, define your purpose. What is your kit for? If it's to stop small problems from getting big, it'll be geared towards things like scrapes that, if infected, become serious. Think antibiotic cream and band-aids. Bug bites, though perhaps better mitigated through repellents, are easily treated if they do get through. Antacid treats heartburn that can make you miserable and disrupt sleep, and that's more serious than it sounds. Muscle soreness can be treated with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs if you can take them. Intestinal distress, which besides the obvious discomfort and annoyance, can cause dehydration. Don't allow blisters to fester. Bring any prescription meds you take because withdrawal can be a problem. If you don't know how to safely use something, such as a tourniquet, don't bring it, or better yet, learn how and when to use one. For snake bites, know how to use the anti-venom kit if you bring one along. Use your hiking context, whether you're solo or not, in a severe environment, your personal health conditions, and your age as guides for what goes in the kit. The consequences for those in our 60s may be greater than for younger hikers. Explore avoiding and transferring risks before adding to your kit. For more likely events with more severe consequences, put in more effort and accept more weight. If any risk is so severe that I can't mitigate it by some other means, I'm going to rethink going on that hike. For less likely or minor issues, small amounts of first aid items may suffice. With all this in mind, here's what I bring in my kit, which weighs about 12 ounces. Now you'll notice that these are all extremely lightweight and only address those little things that can grow into big things that end a hike. Sure, a dislocated shoulder, second-degree sunburns, dehydration, hypothermia can all be extremely dangerous. They need to be taken seriously and should end your hike or get you off the trail for a time. But the first aid kit isn't necessarily the answer. My first aid kit is what keeps me going when normal hiking happens. So does this mean I'm perfectly safe? Well, no, of course not. Solo hiking is risky, and it's like the Boy Scouts say, be prepared. That's your best defense. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this or other topics you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video, please take a look at it now. Thanks for watching.